Hi, I'm Dr. Antoine S. Johnson, Assistant Professor in the Department of African-American and African Studies. My research interests include health activism, anti-Black racism in medicine, and Black culture. And as someone from Oakland, California, I was very intrigued about what was going on around HIV and AIDS in Black communities in the Bay Area. And even though I didn't find any archival collections on Black organizations, I did find ephemera related to Black organizers and organizations. And that led me to the research that I'm currently doing about Black health activism, specifically the Black AIDS epidemic in the Bay Area. Having the opportunity to conduct research on my hometown and be roughly 90 minutes away from my hometown has been one of the biggest benefits of being here at UC Davis. A lot of the people who I'm writing about are still alive, and they've allowed me to conduct interviews with them because they don't have institutionalized archive collections, but they have saved material from the mid-1980s throughout the 1990s that they've been willing to share with me. So creating my own personal archive collection. And what the CAMPSSAH program does for me is allow me to use my research funds to look out for my research subjects. A lot of the people that I write about still live check to check, hardly surviving, and being able to utilize my research funds, for example, to take someone out to dinner, to have a conversation with them. And paying for someone's dinner goes quite further than one can imagine. And that's something that neither I nor my research subjects take for granted. And seeing the way that my students engage with the material and really internalize it because they can relate to things that we talk about when it comes to the poor distribution of resources that people of color suffer from, and how these things can deteriorate your health, thereby increasing your susceptibility to diseases. It's things like poverty and inadequate access to healthy food options that increases your chances to things like heart disease and diabetes. It's not anything that's genetically wrong with you or biologically wrong with you. It's just that these socio-political factors have biological consequences. And so looking at that from the perspective of poor and working class people of color to address health disparities and health inequities, and to see these young students address it too, it gives me a lot of hope.
Hi, my name is Natalia Duong, and I am an assistant professor of Asian American Studies and Science and Technology Studies. My research broadly looks at the intersections of performance, disability studies, and studies of the environment in order to understand how environmental toxicity continues to affect populations across global arenas. More specifically, I look at the herbicide Agent Orange and how this chemical compound has continued to affect communities not only in Vietnam and across Southeast Asia, but also here in the United States. So for example, a lot of folks don't know that Agent Orange and its precedents were actually tested here in the US prior to its use abroad. I'm excited to do this research here at UC Davis because of the ways in which agricultural histories and food studies have been so critical to the foundation of this university. And it's important to understand how our research and these military histories affect not only local communities, but also communities across the ocean and other nation states. I am currently situated at the intersection of Asian American studies and science and technology studies, and that might be a kind of strange or confusing joint appointment for many folks. But in many ways, it's the exact perfect place to understand not only the kind of ways in which critical race theories and histories of political activism amongst student groups in Asian American communities has been critical to the understanding of environmental toxicity, but also how we might look at scientific studies as being historically informed by social, cultural, and political differences. So working at this intersection of Asian American studies and science and technology studies, I'm able to bring together two fields that aren't usually in conversation with one another to understand how critical refugees might be really essential to understanding larger military structures and the science that supports ongoing military work. I'm really grateful to be a part of the CAMPSSAH community because of the ways in which it supports diverse scholars in forwarding their research. So I'm looking forward to participating in manuscript reviews with other scholars with similar kinds of backgrounds. I'm also curious about the ways in which Campos scholars and CAMPSSAH scholars might be able to have more interdisciplinary conversations about our work to further understand how our work applies not only to our kind of limited departments, but broader fields that we might not even be aware of yet.
My name is CJ Jackson. I am a poet, a poetry theorist, and a new assistant professor in the Department of Native American Studies. My research broadly looks at cultural dispossession, particularly in relation to Native and Indigenous literatures, but my work is also in relation to environmental studies, to archival and material cultures, to theories of gender and sexuality, and to visual cultures as well. Through these different lenses, I look at the relationship and the relational ethics between people and places, particularly those places that have a long history of environmental harm, or what we might call environmental catastrophe as a result of capitalism and neoliberal thoughts. I do all of this work primarily through multimedia platforms, such as poetry and literature, yes, but also through film, through DIY heavy metal soundscapes that are coming from Native reservations and communities, and through performances like drag. And so a lot of my work is also concentrated on the displacements of Indigenous bodies and the way that queerness itself can sometimes act as an anti-colonial or even anarchist force against settler epistemologies. The Department of Native American Studies, which is the department that I'm affiliated with, is the first official department of Native and Indigenous peoples, Native Indigenous everything, in the UC system total. And so historically, it's foundational to being able to cultivate a particular department of scholars and graduate students and undergraduate students that are trying to reclaim Indigenous epistemologies. And so for me to be part of that is kind of literally amazing. It's really important for me that when I do my work, it has to come from the work itself. So as opposed to looking at theoretical concepts and then trying to make them fit in this box for an understanding of research, when I go out to communities, I'm sitting with them, I'm working with them, I'm hearing their stories first and foremost before I go out and I decide that I'm going to write something. If I'm looking at literature, I'm looking at the text itself first. And so I'm looking at what is it saying, what story is it telling, who is telling that story before I even write about it. In some instances, when I'm doing my work, when I go out with the communities or I go out and I look at performances or I look at art forms, I don't even sometimes write about those things because just leaving them the way that they are is kind of preserving the work itself.
My name is Jose Manuel Santillana Blanco. I am first year, tenure track assistant professor in American Studies. I am originally from Central California. I am a son of migrant farm workers. I grew up in the towns of Avenal and Kettleman City, where the majority of folks do farm labor. So growing up in Central Valley has really informed all of the work that I do, my writing, my activism, my scholarship. And so for me, as I have navigated institutions of higher education, I take that with me. My research focuses on 3 different communities, including the one that I grew up in. So I do work with Black, Indigenous, and immigrant Mexican mothers in Central California, Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, and the San Alfonso Pueblo in New Mexico. And I look at the particular ways that women of color and Indigenous women have been central to our understanding of environmental justice in this country. And earlier on in my work, one of the core things that was really important for me to emphasize is that women across the United States, particularly working class, poor women of color and Indigenous women, were doing some really fundamental work in solidifying the principles and understandings of, for example, environmental justice. So my work is dedicated to my community in Central California, but also to all the women and mothers who have been fighting against environmental justice across the world. My other research interests or work I've done has focused on queer and trans people of color activism. And so I have also done oral histories with activists, again, queer and trans activists across the Southwest, and the important lessons we could learn from the work on the ground in various communities. I'm very excited about being here. I am excited about the possibilities of expanding my work and working with people who are committed to talking about queer and feminist issues within environmental justice.
My name is Bianca Hand. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and my current book project looks at alterity in the Neo-Assyrian Empire, specifically during the reign of Sargon II, so 721 to 705 BCE. And what I'm really looking to kind of explore with this book project is how Neo-Assyrians conceptualize the concept of the other. So not only through interactions with foreign quote-unquote peoples, but also through landscape and architecture, which we know historically was adapted from all regions of the empire and kind of brought into northern Iraq in the palace at Khorsabad as a way of kind of symbolizing control over these regions. However, I argue in this book project that it also indicates this anxiety towards the other at a time in which the population of the empire was shifting because of forced deportations and settlement into agricultural communities around the royal palace at Khorsabad during this time. So really this book project kind of attempts to elucidate this tension between the Assyrian Empire and how it defines itself and its identity versus the influx of foreign peoples who essentially threaten the empire and its kind of sense of identity. I am on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the American Society of Overseas Research since 2020, actually. And over the past 4 years, we've done a lot of work to increase the amount of underrepresented scholars in the field. We put together a scholarship fund for students who are interested in fieldwork. Any ASOR, the organization, that's the acronym for it, but any ASOR-affiliated archaeological excavation, essentially students are able to apply for these fieldwork opportunities and get fully funded for that. I'm also a part of another scholarship organization that donates $1,000 to students who are interested in attending these conferences or other professional organizations as a way to kind of introduce underrepresented scholars into the field. So while the field is not diverse, myself and my colleagues are pushing to make this field more equitable and more diverse. My department has been nothing but wonderful. I truly feel really, really lucky to be a part of the classics department because of how warm and inviting and welcoming and just interested the department is in not only my research, but what my future plans are or ideas for courses at Davis or potential fieldwork opportunities. I just feel really excited for the potential that I have here, and I know that I have my department's support.